So now let's talk about general strain theory. General strain theory looks at the connection between a person's affective state or how they feel and crime. So we're still talking about economic deprivation to a degree because oftentimes this type of mindset comes out of lacking what you need. So general strain theory looks at how when people experience strain or frustration or anguish, which comes from a lack of having what you want materially, um, and also lacking coping skills, crime is oftentimes the result. So strain leads to negative affective states like um, anger, frustration, disappointment, depression, etc. So basically, what they're suggesting here is that a person wants something. They want to feel wealthy. They want to feel successful. They want the material things in life because we live in a society that puts pressure on people to, for instance, buy a house by the time you're a certain age, own your own vehicle, have a decent job, have money in the bank. But that's not possible for a lot of people in this country. Right now, you have about 40 million people in the United States living in poverty. And with this whole economic collapse, I mean, let's be real. There's a lot of frightening consequences of the coronavirus. And it's hitting our economy as never before. They're saying about 30% of people might end up being unemployed. So our unemployment rate might hit 30% of working people. That's frightening. What's happening in the stock market, 401ks are being wiped out. So there's a lot of frightening things that are happening in this country right now. In a country that takes a great deal of pride in the fact that so many of us, not all of us, but so many of us have access to social mobility. But when you want certain things and you lack the coping skills to deal with the fact that you don't have what you want, sometimes crime is the result. So this also explains middle class crimes. There are people that grew up in middle class families where they have more successful family members or siblings, and they may feel like a failure. And again, that leads to depression and self-hate and anger and envy and so forth. And that negative emotional state may be the motivation for them to break the law. Now, there are a number of sources of strain, and I'll go through this. This is on the next slide, but I'm going to explain these a little bit so you'll understand. So the first is failure to achieve positively valued goals. You desire fame and success, but you don't believe it's attainable. You want to be successful, but you don't believe it's within your reach. A disjunction of expectations and achievements. So you're comparing yourself to someone in your family or your peers that are more successful, and that builds resentment. The next is removal of positively valued stimuli. So there's a sudden loss of someone in your life that you cared for, someone that cared deeply for you. Maybe there's a divorce or separation of parents. So sometimes when kids grow up in a family that faces a divorce, so they become a child of a divorced couple or a broken family, that can lead to resentment. And sometimes those kids begin to act out and start breaking the law and dropping out of school and committing crimes and things of that nature. So that fits a loss of the removal of positively valued stimuli. And then finally, there's the presence of negative stimuli. So parents are mistreating you. So there's child abuse, verbal and sexual abuse, neglect that's linked to delinquency and adult crime. So when kids grow up in homes where they're being abused, they're being sexually violated, sometimes crime is the result of that as well. And we've heard the stories of predatory criminals, serial killers, sexual offenders who grew up in homes where they were abused or mistreated by adults or, that were responsible for caring for them, parents or foster parents. So that also leads to negative emotional states that lead to crime. And sometimes that crime isn't just crime for material gain. Sometimes that's interpersonal or violent crime that's the result of those experiences.